Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Uncultured Cinematic Universe. Here we discuss your favorite movies of all time, as well as the ones that got away. We look at classic and iconic films from two perspectives, that of the die-hard fan and that of the uncultured who's never seen it before until now.
Yeah.
We're your hosts, Joe and Justin, here to act as your guides, playing part as both the fellow enthusiasts and the ignorant and uncultured. Today, to close out our February miniseries on love, we'll be talking about a movie that dares to ask the question: is this the hottest someone has ever looked in a white sweater? It's 1989's When Harry Met Sally.
Oh my God.
Justin,
What did you say? 87?
89.
89. Okay. I was but 2 years old.
I was negative
Not even,
5.
not
Quite,
even a thought.
quite just the twinkle in someone's eye.
Yep. Yeah, this movie is a classic for a number of reasons.
Hmm.
I think, dare I say, it's like the blueprint for modern like rom-coms.
Many would say the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I get that feeling. A lot of I think like modern day sitcoms also kind of play off this kind of formula, right?
From what I've read slash listened to, I listened to a few other like movie related podcasts, and I just listened to an episode of Blank Check that was on When Harry Met Sally. So I'm really hoping I don't like subconsciously plagiarize all of that
That's fine.
this episode. But a lot of people considered it to be like a Woody Allen esque film mixed with sitcom tendencies. But I
Yeah.
think the conclusion that they came to on that episode that I was listening to is that it transcends both of those because it does really dive into and give more agency to both of its characters, I think, than any sitcom or any Woody Allen film ever really would.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the Woody Allen verse. I get that and I understand that he is like a prolific kind of, comedic writer, brings a lot to the table historically and all that kind of stuff amid a whole slew of controversy, but
Not good.
nonetheless, painted a pretty good roadmap, I guess, of bucking traditional storytelling when it comes to two people falling in love.
Yeah. I think with the Woody Allen of it all, I think his films tend to be this same sort of dynamic, like movies about love, movies about people talking about love, very much talking and walking around cities like this.
This is
But
a
I think
talkie. It's a
Oh,
talkie.
such a it's that's all it is.
Yeah.
I think Woody's movies, though, in hindsight, tend to be a little bit more pretentious. Like I liked Midnight in Paris when it came out, and now I'm just like,
Eh.
is this actually good, or is this the worst thing I've ever seen? Whereas with a movie like When Harry Met Sally, and we'll get into like the credits of it all, like I think this really survives the test of time in a way, even though it's like, it's 2023, and it's like we're talking about like a super heteronormative movie that I cannot relate to for a number of reasons, but like I think the relationship dynamics are very recognizable and very real, while also having so much comedy just around every corner.
Yeah, and it's that classic kind of New York delicatessen,
Mm.
Jewish historic kind of comedy to it that we all know and love. The Jerry Seinfelds, we already mentioned the Woody Allens. But yeah, it's got that familiar kind of lived in vibe to it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, you mentioned the pure heteronormative, just like man loves woman, falls in love, this all this kind of stuff. Like, um, yeah, I'd be curious to see like how this would fare in this current day and age if you retold this story.
Well, we're so like I mentioned in my little opening there, we are wrapping up our February miniseries on love. The first movie we did, which was your pick, was um, Lost in Translation, and now we're watching When Harry Met Sally. Both movies are specifically about kind of the nature of love, and both movies uh, kind of stand out in a way that they're not the same as other romantic comedies
Yeah.
of whatever's happening and in their particular time periods, right?
Yeah.
So this movie is very much about the nature of like how friendship becomes love and how love can alternatively put friendship at risk. It's about the risk of love. It's about the worry that love may ruin everything, right?
Yep. Hmm.
And then Lost in Translation, we talked about obviously was about finding kind of fleeting moments of connection with people and how that can often be perceived as strong as or even stronger than regular love.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
Um,
I do like how we picked two movies that are in kind of the romantic comedy drama genre, but they're both standouts in a way for when compared to other movies like them.
yeah, like we did on the previous episode with Lost in Translation, we can and we probably will still deep read, close read this movie
Mm,
of, like you can read stuff deeper than face value. And, it's interesting. Like we were halfway through the movie or whatever, and Ryan leans over to me and she's like, this is giving this particular moment feels very like your pick, like
mhm,
Lost in Translation. They're kind of going through the same thing at that particular beat of the film, and they're kind of sharing in each other's kind of like misery and uncertainty and kind of just traveling through life together.
mhm.
Um, and it just feels very just dialogue heavy, which it is.
Yeah,
Um,
we talked about, my big thesis with Lost in Translation that took me like 45 minutes to get to was like how the audience is kind of along for the ride with that movie. They are experiencing these moments of deep connection in kind of the same way that the characters are. And I think there's a similar element of that with When Harry Met Sally, because like you're basically you're getting to know these characters and you're falling in love with these characters at the same rate that they're
mhm.
falling in love with each other for
I
the same reason, even though there's like 12 years worth of time jumps in here.
I did love that a lot. That it is a journey together with them,
Hmm.
and obviously it's well written. It's a good movie that in that regard of you're supposed to feel at the beginning, kind of put off by each other or by the characters are just like, ugh, young Billy Crystal with his short, shaggy hair
Oh my
spitting
God, Billy
grape
Crystal's
seeds out
hair journey throughout this movie,
is bad.
you could write
Um,
books.
you really could. But yeah, like that first introduction is just like, ugh, these two people will never end up together. And then you jump 5 years later and you're like, there's still bits of growing that needs to be done there, but they're on their path or whatever. And then
Mhm.
yeah, you grow along with them. And then by the end, you're like really fighting for them. You're really cheering them on, even though that's how it's gonna end. But like you're really rooting them on. And I love that. I thought that was great.
Yeah, the movie sets itself up as like the classic male perspective versus the classic female perspective, and the entire movie is about them finding ways to meet in the middle and being surprised by what the other is bringing to the table. And I love that so much of this movie is about like their friendship as opposed to like them kind of having like a no strings attached kind of relationship.
Yep.
Because I find it so much more comforting to see them as friends than
Me too.
towards the end when it gets a little bit more stressful,
Yeah,
uh,
it's
because
that
the sex kind of comes into play.
and it's the it's the fuse that gets lit that's identified and it happens of like sex complicates things. And you see and it does. And it comes to fruition and they take a turn and it's like they have the inner turmoil and they're fighting more. And then she slaps him and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, "Oh my god, is this gonna be one of those movies? Is this gonna be like the breakup where at the end they just don't end up together?" It's
I
more
haven't
about the
seen the
journey.
breakup.
Oh, spoiler.
We should
But,
do
but they don't end up together.
that.
Um, that kind of thing. And you thought or I had that fleeting moment, but, being what this movie is to the culture, to the zeitgeist, to everything, you know, so many scenes have been taken, out of context or just like iconized,
Hmm.
to hell and back. The ending monologue that he gives her at the New Year's party, obviously the diner scene, it lives in infamy. Everyone knows that scene, even if they haven't seen it. Um, and then some of the other like elements that he talks about, it's like men and women can't be friends because sex gets in the way and all that kind of stuff. Like that kind of permeates into other stuff too. So those three things are really like the only kind of touch points that I had to this movie going in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you know much about like the plot or the resolution? I guess you talked about like you kind of knew the ending going into this, but did you were there any elements that surprised you? This is kind of a it's not a very plotty movie. It's more just about like with every scene, um, is it bringing them closer or moving them further apart from each other? That's the purpose of any scene in this movie.
Right, right. And how is this going to play out to the ultimate ending where you think it's going to go?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so like a lot of this was surprising. I didn't know that there were time jumps. I didn't know that um, a lot of the setup gets placed in the beginning and it plays out in the end. Didn't really know that they were going to end up together. But it paints
Yeah,
the picture.
I mean, the director and writer team didn't really know that they were going to end up together until towards the end when they went with the more conventional approach of having them be married towards the end. But there was definitely an option in play where they just remain friends at the end.
And that would have been crazy.
It would be
Um,
crazy,
yeah,
crazy for the time, you know.
I know, and that's how you know you love it.
It feels like a much more modern movie than 1989.
It really does. Even though, some of the hairstyles, some of the fashion, that kind of stuff definitely plays into it, the showing its age and, some of the manipulative, problematic kind of stuff shows up every once in a while. But
Yeah,
largely like this is kind of a almost bulletproof movie in terms of standing the test of time.
yeah. We've covered some movies that have some fairly problematic of their time scenes. You know, I think of Young Frankenstein. I think of Can't Hardly Wait, both of which contain pretty specific moments of near sexual assault that are played for laughs. But with this movie, I guess like it's a benefit that they're talking so much about sex and not necessarily doing sex so much. Where it does stand the test of time, like you're saying, because it focuses so much on how much their friendship means to the both of them and how much they care for each other rather than them being after each other's bodies
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah, I did appreciate that too. It wasn't all about the getting it on of it all. It was you already called this out, but I did love that it was more about just them being friends, majority of the movie.
Mm,
It's great.
it's so
It was
refreshing.
great. And
Um,
they were so adorable together on screen.
they're such a great
Um,
couple. I mean, you
they
always like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, but this was before all of that.
absolutely. Yeah, I don't know who thought Billy Crystal was like the leading man. But he does a really good job. He carries it. He is both incredibly charming, disarming, relatable, and then also just like incredibly just like scathing and really annoying at times.
He's a little cutie in this movie. Um, let me tell you a little bit about my me coming
Yeah,
at this movie. So I actually didn't see When Harry Met Sally until pretty late in life. In the
Joe, you're
world,
28. You're 28.
I'm getting towards the end here. Um, in the world where of like romantic comedies of the 80s and 90s, the Nora Ephron verse of it all, I was definitely more on the You've Got Mail side of things, which came out like 10 years after this.
Yep.
Which shares similar elements to this movie, except it's kind of um, moved around a little bit. So both movies have somewhat of like an enemies to friends to lovers structure,
Right.
uh, except the the friends bit is like 80% of When Harry Met Sally, and it's like 10% on the back end of You've Got Mail. They're much more enemies for a lot of that.
Yep.
And so this was kind of interesting in that way because I've never really seen like a man and woman friendship comedy in this way, especially from the 80s. But my connection to it comes in the fact that like this is the ultimate airplane movie for me.
Oh,
Uh,
really? Okay. I can see
yeah,
that. I can see that.
it's happened a couple times where I will start this movie on takeoff and it will hit credits the second we land. Like it's kind of just been like a bit of a serendipity moment that has solidified it, and it's such a comfort watch for me. I like we saying like we can close read uh, all these movies all over the place like we do on this podcast, and I feel like every scene of this movie can be talked about to some extent,
Yeah.
just the dynamics at play, just through the dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is, you nailed it. It is comforting for sure. I loved the visual the aesthetics of it. I loved the fall sequence, the winter
It's like
sequences.
eating a hot soup and grilled cheese, you know?
It's great. And like you mentioned the fashion and the sweaters, um, which, that kind of look, the relaxed fit kind of thing, that's all coming back.
Hmm.
People are looking back at Seinfeld. People are looking back at When Harry Met Sally and like, that's a Luke right there. I'm gonna pull that off. But yeah, it is 100% like tactile, comforting. Um, there's not a lot of like over the top, even like loud bits
Hmm.
of dialogue. There's not hardly any yelling or anything like that. Um, there's hardly like any loud bits of music. Obviously, it's not an action movie or whatever, but it is a calm, and I
There's
can see
no
how this would play well into a movie or a airplane movie.
Everything is enjoyable to watch. There's no like mentally squeamish scenes, and the plot itself is so just like ambling a little bit almost. It has its ups and downs in terms of their relationship, but there's never really any like major stakes at play. They're not doing a heist or anything like that. And so you can really kind of come in and come out of it, and there's always just something on screen to pay attention to, right?
Hmm. Yep, I loved it. It was great.
Friendship cinema.
That's
Uh,
what this was.
very low concept. Yeah. Okay, so let me throw some stats at
Give me
you,
the stats.
and then we can get into some more discussion here. So
Sure.
this movie, a lot of people talk about Nora Ephron when they talk about this movie, but this is actually a movie that she wrote. She did not direct.
Okay. Yeah,
This
this
movie,
was Rob Reiner.
this movie was directed by Robert Reiner, of the Reiner household,
Yep.
famous
House
for
Reiner.
directing other movies like Stand by Me and
Hmm.
Princess Bride. Um, it was written by Nora Ephron. This kind of sets the tone for what an Ephron movie would become in terms of just like long shots, long dialogue, very like homey settings, very getting the audience comfortable with your characters, right? Stars Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan, Carrie Fisher, and Bruno Kirby, who are awesome in this movie.
They are great.
Released in July of 1989, made $92 million against a budget of 16 million. Everyone was happy with that, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
And it was inspired by Rob Reiner's own divorce at the time. So he was married to Penny Marshall,
Yeah.
and they were divorced. So he's kind of in this place of like trying to figure out uh, what relationships between men and women really need to be like. Can you be friends? Do you have to be lovers? Rob Reiner's like, I have to have sex with everyone. Why does everyone want to? Uh,
I'm so sexy. What do I do with this?
and a lot of like the core plot elements and dialogue came between a collaboration with him and Efron. She's kind of bringing in the feminine side of things. He's bringing in the more masculine side.
I
But
love
then a
it.
lot of the scenes and dialogue between Harry and Sally actually came between from his relationship with Billy Crystal. So they were like best friends at the time. They used to call them each other up on the phone and talk through stuff. So a lot of that like level of relationship, the friendship portrayed in the film, is
Hmm.
reflecting their friendship. So
That's fun.
it's kind of how Crystal is connected to all of this and how he became a bit of an unlikely leading man here, even though
Yeah.
he had obviously been in a bunch of stuff in the 80s and he had worked with Reiner before. Um, yeah,
Can I
so
just
let's
say
go.
let me say
Yeah,
real quick. Let me say real quick that, the choice to have Billy Crystal as the lead opposite Meg Ryan
hmm
is really nice because Billy Crystal is like an everyman.
hmm
He's very approachable. He's very conventionally handsome. But he's not like uh, this is not a slight or anything to the man or anything like that. He's not like
he's not the most handsome person in the world.
he's not, model level. He's
Yeah,
not towering over her. He's very middle of the road, you know, very safe haircut by the end once he finds the look, the
you
Billy
know what it?
Crystal cut.
Do you know what it reminds me of?
What?
Did you ever watch West Wing when it was coming out?
No.
You never seen West Wing?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so that is obviously a show about the American White House that originally had Rob Lowe on it as like a speechwriter person, but then also Bradley Whitford.
Hmm.
And you know who Bradley Whitford is? He's in, oh God, what's he in? He's in like Get Out. He's in,
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
look, look up an image. He's kind of similar to how Billy Crystal looks in this movie. And a lot of what surprised people about that show is how many fans ended up being attracted to Bradley Whitford instead of Rob Lowe, who's supposed to be more of like the main character heartthrob.
Yeah.
Rob Lowe ended up leaving 4 seasons into that show, maybe for those reasons. It was never super clear, and it's kind of a similar deal in my mind where it's like Bradley Whitford's a little bit unconventionally attractive, but he's also kind of the hottest person in the world on that show.
You know, my connection to Bradley Whitford is Billy Madison.
Oh,
I
is he
don't
like
know.
the bad guy in Billy Madison?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
amazing.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, it was a choice to make Billy Crystal the lead because I think a lot of middle America,
Hmm.
middle income, straight up the middle of the road men could, relate, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, and
So
he's also coming from like a comedy background. A lot of the lines in the movie came from him kind of improvising. He came up with the "I'll have what she's having" line
did he?
during the cat scene.
That
Um,
sneaky bastard. So he looked over to the lady and he said, "Hey, you say this. This will be hilarious."
yeah, it's really fun like reading about the history of this movie because like you come to learn like okay, it starts out with Reiner and then he's talking with Billy Crystal, he's talking with Nora Ephron. They start to collaborate. And then they kind of bring in more and more people who become the main players in this movie. So Meg Ryan comes in and she brings her own take on it. A lot of the input on that fake orgasm scene came from her as well. And then you have like Carrie Fisher and Bruno Kirby who come in and like they're bringing their own level of improv as well. So it seemed like from what I've read and from what I've listened to, like it was a very much a collaborative time on
I
set.
love that. And you can feel that like a lot of it is effortless
Hmm.
in some of the stuff like Billy Crystal and uh I wrote down his characters. Oh, Jess. Yeah, his friend Jess in the movie. They seem like genuinely good friends. They seem genuine. Carrie Fisher is dynamite. She is so much fun and she seems like a genuine real friend obsessed with banging married men,
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh, she's so quirky in that way. How she has that one line that she keeps repeating because they're like, "He's never gonna leave his
He's
wife."
never gonna leave him. Yeah. I thought that was really, really good.
So
Um,
good, and the introduction of the Jess character when they're at the baseball, the football game, and the wave keeps coming around in the middle of their conversation.
like it's a
So
really
funny.
deep, hard conversation, and the wave keeps happening. I love it.
Oh, what is the quote I have for that? I have like a list of quotes at the end here. Oh, marriages don't break up on account of infidelity. It's just a symptom that something else is wrong. Oh, really? Well, that symptom is
It's
fucking my
fucking my
wife.
wife. That was really good. I was really surprised at some of the use of language.
It's an R-rated comedy,
Yeah, and
which is surprising. Yeah,
it that's what made it to me feel a little more modern and a little more, able to stand the test of time because they still talk, or people still talk like that.
yeah.
And it's not, it doesn't feel like they're using any type of language that's not approachable or whatever. It still seems like real
It doesn't feel
conversation.
sanitized in any way.
Absolutely not. That is the word that exactly popped in my head.
Yeah.
Joe, before we jump any further, do you want to watch this trailer? It's a good
Show me
one.
that trailer. I haven't seen it yet.
It's so much fun. Here we go.
Mhm.
Uh, 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 uh.
Men and women can't be friends because no man can be friends with a woman that he finds attractive. He always wants to have sex with her.
So you're saying that a man can be friends with a woman he finds unattractive?
No, you pretty much want to nail him too. Grape?
No, I don't like to eat between meals.
I'll
Disgusting.
roll down the window. A faceless guy rips off your clothes, and that's the sex fantasy you've been having since you were 12. Exactly the same.
Well, sometimes I varied it a little.
Which part?
What I'm wearing.
You tell her about other women.
Yeah. Like the other night. I made love to this woman, and it was so incredible. I took her to a place that wasn't human. She actually meowed.
You made a woman meow?
Are you comfortable?
Sure. I need to talk.
What happened? What's the matter?
Harry came over last
I went
night.
over to Sally's last night.
Because I was upset that Joe was getting
And
married.
one thing led to another.
And before I knew it, we were
To
kissing,
make a
and
long
then
story short,
we did it.
They did it.
You're challenging,
I'm difficult. I'm too structured. I'm completely closed off.
but in a good way.
And I'm gonna be 40.
When?
Someday.
In 8 years.
It's not the same for men. Charlie Chaplin had babies when he was 73.
Yeah, but he was too old to pick them up.
That's a good one. That's a good trailer.
Good trailer because it reflects the vibe of the movie. It's like you're just watching people having these conversations.
With a nice, delicate jazz background to kind of carry you through. It's great.
And there's no voiceover that's like, sometimes you gotta meet Harry before you can be Sally.
Sometimes you gotta have what she's having.
We talked in some of our earlier episodes around like so many of the movies that we cover could be so easily adaptable into video games. And I just had demented thought of a When Harry Met Sally video game. Because like all this movie is people sitting or standing across from each other and having these conversations. And I want these little like floating numbers next to their head where it's just their stats. So I want to see like with every line, does Harry's attraction to Sally go up? Does Sally's love for Harry go up or down?
Yeah.
I want to see like their health bars and their mental bars fill up or go down whenever they have little conversations on the side with Carrie Fisher or Bruno Kirby.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's so I don't want to say algorithmic is the word. That's the wrong word, but it's like it's the way that this script is structured is so interesting to me because there's fairly little plot except like I said, it's really just does each scene push them together or pull them apart.
Yeah, and I bet you could go through each scene and be like, "Oh, they're like 2 points further apart," or "Oh, this one definitely four bits closer." Super cool.
Right.
Yeah, I would love a game. Yeah.
Before we get too far into this, and I have a few more talking points I want to hit on, I'm going to make you do what may be the easiest or hardest plot description we've had to do so far.
Yep.
And I'm going to give you a minute.
That's fine. Yeah.
And I'll leave it up to you to decide, what to include versus not, because it's all about a vibe.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
All right.
I'm ready when you're ready.
Are you ready?
I am.
All right. 1 minute starting now.
When Harry Met Sally involves Harry and Sally. They meet in college. They're both in their early 20s, which, yeah, right. They go on a car ride together all the way to New York. They don't hit it off. 5 years later, they meet up again later. He still kind of grinds her gears. She's still kind of over the top. They don't get together yet. 5 years later, I think still, I don't know. It's multiple
30
jumps.
seconds.
They become close. They become friends. He's fresh off a divorce. She just broke up with her boyfriend. They kind of share this thing. They kind of grow closer. They kind of become more friends, even though at the beginning he says men and women cannot be friends. But look at that. They're becoming friends. And then they slowly fall in love. They slowly, without telling each other, they have sex. It complicates things. They get into a fight, but then they reconcile and they do end up together in the end. And they have coconut cake at their wedding.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you did it.
Yeah, what's the year? What are the year jumps? It's
year jumps. So they start in they're out of college in 1977. They're going from Chicago to New York, and then it's like 5 years to 1983 ish.
Mm-hmm.
another five. Hang on, another 5 years. Yeah, no, that doesn't make sense. 1982. Another 5 years. 1987. That's when they become friends, and then it's like a year and a half to 2 years till
And
the
being
Chinese
friends.
New Year's party.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense. That checks out. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I completely forgot what I was going to say. But
No worries.
so we talk about how this movie is very much of just like a series of conversations, a series of relationship dynamics at play, right? And it feels very. I want to. I've never lived in New York, but it feels very much like a New York movie in that way, where you could just have the city as a backdrop, and that almost like it adds an extra layer of je ne sais quoi
In
to it.
and of itself, the city is another character. Yes.
Right. And you've mentioned Seinfeld a couple
Mm.
times, a
Hmm.
show that is famously about nothing, almost in the way that this movie is about nothing, but these characters developing a relationship, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen a full episode of Seinfeld, and I was waiting for this moment to drop that one on you. And so I wanted to get your just general thoughts around how that show compares to this movie, both released around the same time. I want to say maybe Seinfeld was a few years later.
I
Um,
think it was about the same time, like 89, 90 was when it got its start. Now, I am not the Seinfeld connoisseur.
this is why we need
Uh,
guests on the show.
yeah, and some of our friends, I think Matt and Carrie specifically, shout out, uh, are more versed in this world.
Mm,
But yeah, it's again, it's the thing that everyone knows about that the show. Seinfeld is a show about nothing.
mhm.
But it is just kind of like this. It is very dialogue heavy. It is heavy on the comedy, situational stuff, and just people being around each other and their friendships.
You
So
Yeah, you can imagine a world where like this movie's such a big hit and people are trying to figure out how to recapture that magic, and
yeah,
it's
how do
really
we do
just
that?
like let's stick them in a diner and have them talk about stuff.
Like Jerry Seinfeld jumped on that, said, I will make a complete hit show about this and it will be amazing. Just the exact same formula. So like I made a specific note about this, that this gives big Jerry and Elaine vibes. So in the show,
Hmm.
early in the early season or early few episodes or whatever, Jerry and Elaine do sleep together
Hmm.
and it complicates their friendship. But they eventually work their way around it and they remain friends the remainder of the show.
I mean,
Uh,
that's kind of another classic example of like men and women being friends because Elaine is just so much like a part of that group
mhm.
in a way that kind of defies gender, I guess, for the time.
Yeah, and she plays a lot, or Elaine plays a lot of the similar role that Sally Meg Ryan does in this movie of
Mhm.
just like offering, like a female perspective on, George or Jerry or
Mhm.
Kramer's kind of love life at the moment of what's going on, of just like, oh, no, what's actually happening here? Because from a woman perspective, this is what's happening. When
Mhm.
she says this, she means this. And it's a lot of that. So I was pleasantly pleased as punch throughout this movie, seeing that dynamic kind of play out in between them. Specifically, I think when we think of the cozy white sweater that he's wearing when they're rolling out the carpet together and they're kind of just talking, um, just like about their lives or whatever, and it's just like this feels like a Seinfeld conversation.
Every apartment in this movie is my dream apartment to have. Like, how does he live in that place in 1989 without being like American Psycho levels of rich sociopath?
So like they hint at it that he's like a political advisor or a
Like,
political
what
writer
does
or
that
whatever.
mean?
It's vague enough, but like you can draw on it like, oh, obviously of course he does well for himself.
Is he working for Bush Senior? Like, how does that work?
Bush Senior, Dole, all of them, probably. Jimmy Carter, they probably cross paths.
He was big with Dole.
He was a big
Um,
Dole guy.
yeah, I like how this movie. It's pretty simple in terms of its plot, but like you can see how their relationship with each other and their thoughts on the opposite gender mature as they are literally physically maturing as people. You know, they
Mhm.
start out as little baby, early 20 somethings, regardless of how convincing that is. And then they end up in like this is basically them going through their crazy 20 years and ending up in their early 30s, which we're both on either sides of right now.
Yep.
So it's like there's a level of trying to really solidify yourself once you get into your 30s and figure out who you really want to be. And I like how they both help each other in that direction throughout the movie.
I did appreciate the journey that they both went on.
Mm,
Specifically, Billy Crystal, Harry goes through more of a change. When you first meet him, he's way not approachable, kind
mhm,
of a scumbag, like really scathing, like I mentioned before, just like not likable
mhm.
overall. And even more so 5 years later, when he's like a young professional, when they meet again on the plane, um, still kind of a dirtbag in a
It's
way.
it's interesting to see like the shift in dynamic there because like when you think about like them being co-leads of this movie, Billy Crystal like maybe edges her out a little bit in terms of like main character status on this movie, especially in the first half, because he takes on more of like the dominant role in whatever conversation they're in. Like she comes off as a little bit more naive, he comes off as a little bit more sarcastic, but he's got more experience or whatever. He's the one throwing out all these theories about love and men and women that become the theories and
The
the
driving force of the
driving
movie.
force of the movie. But um, that's kind of in like their early to mid 20s phase, and you can tell that he's kind of the master of that phase. But as the movie goes on, she kind of becomes the more confident and secure one, and you can see that there's obviously the main turning point where she like owns his ass with the fake orgasm scene in Cat's Deli, which is obviously like the big scene from this movie. But then when it comes time for them to actually sleep together, he's obviously freaked out right after it happens. He doesn't really know how to handle it. Whereas there's like nice little moments of in between where they're both in separate rooms and they're both kind of considering what's happening. And you can tell she's kind of like thinking through it, and she seems just more and more confident that this is a good thing that just happened.
And he's like, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Yeah.
And
He's
then
like, "What happened?"
she's the one who's kind of like holding him on a leash for the rest of the movie in terms of like him trying to win her back, and she's trying to decide like does she want to have this man in her life, or has she grown past him a little bit.
Yeah. It is interesting because, yeah, like the first two phases, we'll call them the
Hmm.
early college phase and then like the mid young professional kind of phase when they're
The
20s.
Avengers and Ultron phases.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Phase two. Um, yeah. He still thinks he's in control. And
Hmm.
once we get to phase three, early 30s, early to mid 30s, you're facing, your, you know, uh, not midlife crisis, but still kind of quarter life crisis in a way. They both come off big breakups. He's coming off a divorce, and that's the thing that shakes his world,
Hmm.
that humbles him, brings him back down to earth enough to become a more likable person in the eyes of Sally.
Hmm.
They're in the bookstore, and she has the line of like, "Don't look now. I know him. That's Harry, whatever his name is. He won't even remember my name." And he comes up in such like a very approachable way, and it's just like, "Sally Jenkins." Yep.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's just like, "Oh, he's turned around a lot. You had to go through some shit in the past 5 years to really bring you back down." He's got a beard. He's very handsome. He feels comfortable in himself. But his world is shaken.
That's also it's one of my favorite Carrie Fisher lines from the movie is someone is staring at you in personal growth. It's so
It's good.
um yeah, let's talk about. So this movie is such friendship cinema, as I've said. These people have the best friends in any movie.
Yeah.
So Carrie Fisher's great with Meg Ryan. Bruno Kirby is great with Billy Crystal. I I love the moment you first meet Carrie Fisher when they're having like um, when Meg Ryan's having lunch with her girlfriends like near the lake in Central Park or whatever, and she hears that she's single, and Carrie immediately pulls out like a Rolodex. Is that what it is? Of
Yeah, yeah.
like, all the single men. She finds out one of them is married and like folds
The
the
corner. Yeah.
so good. And then there's they obviously form the subplot of this movie where it's like their relationship is budding almost more naturally and more faster than Harry and Sally's, because the second they first meet, it's they're set up on dates opposite each other, and it becomes immediately apparent that Bruno and Carrie are more interested in each other than the dates that they are set up on, and then they both run into a cab with each other at the end, completely
I thought
abandoned.
that was great. That was
That's
so good. I
it's
love that scene. Yeah. They both give each other a look of like, "Oh, this isn't how this is supposed to go." And like maybe a little bit deeper of like, "Well, maybe we're supposed to end up together?" And
Mhm.
you could kind of see the question marks flying towards each other. But yeah, I thought that was really great. But yeah, so again, like looking at the phases and all of that, um, I think that's really approachable. Um, I think that's kind of what drew me to it. Uh, being thinking you're in your 20s, you're fresh out of college, you know everything, you know what you want to do, you're very confident, you think you know how the world works. 5 years later, you're in your like professional world, you still think you kind of know how the world works. Maybe it's a little bit different from what how you originally thought. But once you hit your 30s, like I've known and I, personally like have been through a lot of stuff since I turned 30.
Mhm.
And that's where you really find who you are and you find your place in the world and your person in the world and all that kind of stuff. And that's one thing that I really took away from this movie that like, oh man, I really enjoy this about it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think. I mean, if this movie does have a conflict or a thing to overcome, it's the fact that like they both are very firmly set in their own worlds in their early 20s, and they both have these like ideologies about things, and they're both polar opposites from each other, and neither of them expect that within the next 12 years they're going to become best friends with a member of the opposite gender, right?
Yep.
And like once that happens, a lot of the mishaps, a lot of the questions that arise from the movie is like, is this weird? How do we navigate this? Because we really do just want to be friends, and we get a level of comfort from each other that we don't get from anyone else, and yet we don't necessarily want to have sex with each other just right outright, but we also don't want to see each other with other people too. So it
Yeah.
becomes very much a confusing situation and a balance between, um, is this supposed to be happening, or should we be more conforming to the norms of society?
I like that it wasn't like beating you over the head so much of like that theme of, well, you guys can't be friends. There's no way you guys can be friends. You guys are opposite sex. There's no way. Like it only comes up a couple times
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of like disprove it by being friends and living their life together and kind of sharing these experiences. I think any other kind of like lazier rom-com would kind of like continually like that's the obstacle that they keep hitting
I
or
think
the yeah.
any other lazier rom com, they both have like more friends of the same gender too, and that it would be kind of like a their friends ganging up on them to persuade them one way or another. But I do like it how it's like just them, and then it's like just Carrie Fisher and just Bruno Kirby,
Yep.
basically, when it comes down to it. And so it becomes this kind of four way of like, I mean, literally spelled out in the phone call scene of like they are communicating with each other, and then the other two on the outside are communicating with them, and it becomes uh, that level of communication throughout the movie, where these four people's stories are played out through one-on-one interactions that are often like switched up in a way that shows different dynamics between them.
Yeah. So like early on, this was one thing I didn't expect, and I'm glad it didn't pan out this way. But early on in the movie, I was like, is Billy Crystal the bad guy? Because he's constantly like belittling her and gaslighting her.
Hmm.
But that's only like in the first two phases. So I'm glad that he grew out of that kind of like borderline misogynistic bullshit kind of
Yeah.
alpha male kind of behavior. Unfortunately, it had to take a divorce to humble him, to kind of show him the way a little bit more. But that was one thing that jumped out to me at first. I was like, I really don't like him at all. And if this is his character, like this movie's gonna suck. But once they hit their 30s or whatever, he's a different person.
Yeah, you can tell he's the type of person who just thinks about things that are important to him nonstop. Like
In the moment,
the
yeah.
way he introduces himself is like, I think about death all the time for days at a time.
And
So
he thinks it's so cool.
he's
Yeah.
very early 20s, emo, whatever. And then um, once Sally becomes such an important part of his life, obviously he's going to be thinking about her all the time. He can't stop calling her, he can't stop leaving messages. And so he's kind of the driving force. Once they have a little bit of a friendship breakup, he needs them to be back together in
Yeah.
a way. And then Sally, on the other hand, is an alternative to that, where like she can think about other things besides
Hmm.
him. She seems to have more solid, long lasting relationships. They're boring, sure, but like, yeah, she takes a more careful approach to the way that she has relationships with people than him.
One thing I really liked and enjoyed was the parallel conversation. It comes to a head at the I think it was one of my favorite scenes was the split phone call scene after they
Hmm.
sleep together. They're essentially saying the same thing
Hmm.
to their friends, and that happens a couple other times in bits throughout the movie. Um, like when they go on the double date and it's not working out so well, they're both having the same conversation of like,
Hmm.
like if you want to call them, like that's fine, but like not right now. Like they're going through a tough time. They're essentially saying the same thing. Um,
It's a very mirrored, symmetrical story. It's a dance between these two people, and they both have similar backup dancers.
And I think it was great. And one thing that it just popped into my head right now that draws a comparison is Jim and Pam's relationship at the
Hmm.
beginning of The Office, seasons 1 and 2 and 3, of being these friends, you know, against all odds of
Hmm.
sorts. Obvious obstacles come in, with her engagement to Roy or him dating um, Rashida Jones or all this kind of stuff. It's very reminiscent of that, of just like they're going to end up together because they know each other in such a deep, intimate way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the Jim and Pam of it all kind of became an archetype on its own. That was grown out of this, like, friends to lovers relationship. And now every rom-com TV show is repeating that. You always have the Jim and Pam there.
Yeah,
So I mean, in my own experience, like I've seen it in shows like Superstore, and I'm seeing it now in shows like Abbott Elementary, where like you have these friendships, and then they have a moment where they happen to kiss, and then there's the ultimate follow up of like, is this going to completely um, ruin our relationship? Should we just forget that this ever happened? It's all the same versions of the same conversation. And so now it almost seems like, going back to like how there originally was an ending of When Harry Met Sally, where they remained friends and they didn't really pursue a romantic relationship. Now it kind of seems like doing that in a movie or a TV show is a little bit going against the norm. And so who's
yeah,
going to do that next, instead of having your two lead romantic characters end up together at
yeah,
the end, or for the last four seasons of a show?
yeah. I'd love to see more of that. That's honestly, I think, more of a realistic approach to
It's more
it,
of a challenge too. Like, how do
and it
you
really is.
keep
Yeah,
the audience on board if they're just friends the entire time?
yeah. So like you get, did you ever watch New Girl?
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's Jess and Nick. They kind of start out as friends, acquaintances, friends. They sleep together, they stay together, they break up, they become friends, they end up together again. That kind of thing. Um, what else? Oh yeah, Parks and Rec. You
Hmm.
get Leslie and Ben. They kind of start out same way of kind of like enemies, kind of frenemies, friends,
Yeah.
lovers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
Parks and Rec does some fun stuff to it, where like they end up in like the secret lover phase for a little bit longer than you would expect, just because of like there becomes like political reasons on that show.
yep.
Um, but
But
yeah,
yeah,
it's become a way of telling a story that is fun to play with, and also fun to go against
yeah.
in movies and TV shows since.
So Joe, can we get just peel it back one layer and go a little bit deeper here?
Hmm.
Now, you mentioned this at the top, and I want to explore it a little bit. This isn't in my notes,
Oh
This is
my god,
just
I'm so
this
scared.
is coming up organically. So, we mentioned that, there's this archetype, there's this formula for this kind of relationship in modern media, and it is heteronormative.
Hmm.
Is there anything out there today or in the past or whatever that plays with similar tropes of friends or lovers or friends, that kind of thing, in alternative cinema, in gay movies or anything like that? Is there anything like that that exists?
It's it's interesting, and I was trying to find like a connection like that in my notes while thinking through this movie. And I think one of the key differences that's kind of hard to recreate on like the gay side of things is that so much of this movie is not just about um how how am I saying this? So much of this movie, When Harry Met Sally, is about the fact that they are coming at it from two different genders, two different perspectives, right?
Mhm.
And so, what you get with more gay movies is you're often it's not really as much about a gender thing as it
Right.
is more about like a class thing, an opinions thing, or you're both against like a similar issue that you're both fighting against. And so once you take that out of it, it's really kind of like more of an open book for how to proceed in like the gay rom com genre. And I wish there were more examples to think through. I mean, very recently, you think of like something like Fire Island that came out on Hulu,
Mhm.
which is it's like a gay retelling of Pride and Prejudice in a modern setting,
Right.
and so it hits those same notes, but it's very much more different personalities in general clashing and learning
Yeah.
to mold with each other, and less relying on gendered archetypes.
Sure, yeah, and I totally get that and understand that. But, I kinda see past that too of just, like, I think more of the crux is, yeah, there is the gendered specific things, but,
Mm.
it is really just like, can people stay friends,
Yeah.
or can they transform and put the friendship at risk by then taking it to the next level?
Hmm. And
So,
that's, I mean, that very idea, I think, is something that can kind of transcend different genres of the rom com. You know,
yeah,
it's something that's a little bit more universal. The idea of friendship and the idea of a friendship style love as opposed to a romantic style love, and what puts the other at risk.
yeah, yeah, I'd love to see this explored way more in the future of
Hmm,
cinema.
hmm.
Why not?
And it probably will. You know, if we
Because damn
rom
damn
coms that aren't dumb little Netflix movies.
damn right. I think it's high time that, Hollywood and media at large kinda ditches just the safe storytelling because it's getting boring,
Yeah.
Like, eh, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it has taken the world by storm. The HBO television series based on the video game, The Last of Us.
Okay, I haven't seen it. You know my struggles here because I can't decide if I want to play the game first or watch the show first. What's going to spoil what? Tell me, speak on that. What are your thoughts here?
So, I don't wanna spoil anything, but
I know basic plot lines, I think.
yeah, so, like, episode 3 is a
Hmm.
very bottle episode, and it focuses around 2 individuals and their relationship throughout, a span of time, and it is literally one of the most compelling, impressive, emotionally devastating, like, pieces of media I've ever seen
Hmm.
in the span of, an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 20 minutes or whatever, and I think, like, the reaction to it in just modern media and modern culture and stuff like that, like, signals a change for, like, people want to see different kind of storytelling. They wanna see less heteronormative. They wanna see more varied and more real love stories, and
Yeah.
that's what it was. And it was just so groundbreaking and just, to take place in this post-apocalyptic, crazy video game-based world or whatever, this really wonderful love story, contained story,
Hmm.
um, I think spells uh, good things for more explorations to make it um, more common.
Yeah, and as
So,
as we begin to see more types of relationships, more of ourselves up on the screen, uh, while still watching these movies from like the '80s, '90s, 2000s, it's I'd be interested to start noticing more like what's being kept versus what's being thrown out in terms
yeah.
of tropes and stuff. And I
Yep.
think when Harry Met Sally, we talked about how so much of it stands the test of time because it's really just two people connecting at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think you could tell this story ad nauseum, swapping the people out,
Hmm.
because it is coming down to two people meeting very young in their life, and they're on polar opposites. They think they know, they have themselves figured out. They meet up again a little bit later, and then they meet up 5 years again after that. One of their worlds is rocked, their perspectives change, and it's more about, can these friends remain, or do they take it to the next level? And I would love to see it explored in multitudes of ways.
Hmm. So good.
Love it.
Yeah, well, like we said at the beginning, like you could write an essay about every single frame of this movie, and
Yes.
we can't do that because it's already been written a million times. So Justin, I want to make a little quick stop into Cocktail Town before getting into our game because we forgot
Yeah.
cocktails this whole time.
I know mine's almost gone. Mine's almost gone. This is this little red boy.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been drinking this whole time too. Tell me about it.
this is this obviously this idea came from my muse, my light, my world, Ryan.
Hmm.
Um, this is the wagon wheel.
Shout out to Ryan. Oh, I love the wagon wheel. Yes.
Love that scene. Dynamite. Um, yeah, so it's just a standard cocktail. 1.5 ounces bourbon, cognac, but I don't have cognac, so I subbed some dark rum, lemon juice, and grenadine. That makes it red. A little bit of simple syrup. It's delicious.
Mm, that sounds amazing.
Because
Um,
I was trying to think of, what could I do with this movie? What can I make from this movie? And that's what we landed on, because I explored a couple of other things. But I'm interested to see where you landed.
yeah. This is a mocktail. This has no alcohol in it. A first for the show.
Ooh,
It's a cup of ginger ale with ice, some splashes of lime juice, and then a few dashes of bitters that I'm calling the fake orgasm.
ooh, fake out. I love it.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yes,
I
because it made you think it was alcohol.
made you think. You thought so. You don't. You don't know. Um, I was exploring, like pecan pie. I loved that scene when they're having the pecan pie.
Hmm.
That the that
I mean, coming back to video games based on movies as a concept and having the idea of like key little items for every scene that you can kind of collect along the way. This movie has so many items that become topics of conversation. You know, you got the wagon wheel, you got the pecan pie, things that become metaphorical or very realistic portrayals of like how their relationship is progressing.
yeah.
The little
I
karaoke machine that you see at Sharper Image, and then he's using it on the phone at the end of the movie.
It's great. He bought it. Yeah, I love it. I would love to see a game of kind of like Legend of Zelda style.
Hmm.
It's like a 2D platform kind of thing. You're kind of just moving around, and you're just having conversations, and you get to like pick and choose what you say. Like
Is it
I
two
would love that.
player? Is someone Harry and is someone Sally?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. That'd be great. It's split screen. Yeah.
hell.
That'd be so much fun. I would love that.
One
There,
Harry
I mean,
and Sally expansion pack. You can now play as Carrier Bruno.
the DLC, yeah. There is a specific category of video games, like for Switch and stuff like that, that are just specifically cozy games.
Hmm.
And I think this, When Harry Met Sally, the video game, would fall in that category.
Like crazier things have happened. You could see that being like a little ironic hit if they came out with it right now, and it's just like a little walk around, talk around style game.
Like they should be 8-bit characters,
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
sweaters and stuff. Yeah, uh-huh.
Mm.
We're on the same wavelength.
I think what this podcast is ultimately leading to is a great portfolio of video games based on movies that we're going to sell, and also an album's worth of game music that has
Oh
been
yeah,
composed specifically for this show.
by yours truly. Yes.
Um,
I'm very excited about the one that we got today.
I am very excited. Speaking of which, let's just get right into the game portion of our show.
Already? All right.
Yeah,
Let's do
we're
it.
going to dive right in.
Fuck it. Let's do it. This is do you want to introduce the title of the game? This is how
Yeah.
this works, by the way. Joe gives me the title of the game he's going to do, and that's it.
Yeah, I texted Justin this a couple days ago, and he kind of hopefully picked it up and ran with it. Let me see exactly what I texted you. So
Actually don't. Don't spoil it. Let's see.
you don't want me to say the name of the game?
Yeah, we'll do it in the intro
Okay.
thing.
Yeah. I'll talk more about it afterwards, but let's have a little opener to our game portion.
Let's do it. Here we go. It's time for everyone's favorite meat and cheese themed game show. I'll have what she's having. And by that I mean a sandwich. Isn't that fun? That's fun.
Oh, that's so great. Yes, the name of the game that I have come up with for this episode is I'll have what she's having, and by that I mean a sandwich. So we've gone a little bit crazy with games in the past few episodes. They've been a little cerebral, they've been a little improvisational. And in the spirit of this movie just being so like down to earth basics, just like two people coming together and talking about it. I decided to go back to the basics too, and I'm just giving you a simple little quiz game. And it's
About
gonna
sandwiches.
be about sandwiches.
Yes.
Because of obviously the Cat's Deli scene where they're eating some sort of turkey sandwich when she does the fake orgasm scene.
I think she's having turkey and he's having pastrami.
Ooh, pastrami.
Mhm.
Okay, so Justin, let me just give you the rules here. I'm going to give you 6 questions about sandwiches. I'm going to give you
Okay.
multiple choice for each,
Okay.
and you're just going to tell me your best guess for each.
Done. Simple, like a sandwich itself.
Like a sandwich should be. Okay, let me dive right in with question 1. What is the most popular sandwich in America? Is it the ham sandwich, which consists of ham, cheese, and mustard or mayo, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or the BLT, which is bacon, lettuce, and tomato?
BLTs to me barely register as a sandwich. Ham and cheese, probably not. I'm going to go with peanut butter and jelly because of kids. Peanut butter and jelly, final answer.
See, that makes sense in my mind, but it's actually the ham sandwich.
God damn it. Okay.
Yeah, people just be eating those all over the place.
Just ham all day. Okay. All right.
Okay, so question 2. Hang on. My notes may have gotten mixed up here, but you know what? I'm going to go with it. Question 2. What is the average length in seconds of the female orgasm? Is it 10 seconds, 20 seconds, or 60 seconds?
Or I should know this. I think it's 60.
You think it's 60?
Yeah.
Wow. The average one's 20.
I was going to say 20, but then I went with 60.
Yeah, that's a good direction to go with that one.
Ouch.
Okay, question 3. We're back on track. On average, how many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches will the typical American eat before graduating high school?
Mm.
Is it 100, 500, or 1,500?
Let's see. Before graduating high school, you're 18 years old. If you have a sandwich a day, 15, no, 1,500. No,
Do the math on that
yes, 1,500. Yep.
1,500? Justin, that's correct. It's 1,500.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Question 4. Orgasms can cause the body to release the hormone prolactin, which can increase which of your senses? Is it taste, smell, or sight?
Ooh, prolactin?
Mm-hmm.
Prolactin is the hormone that's released.
Yeah.
And it's, what did you say? Taste, smell, or sight?
Taste, smell, or sight.
Smell.
Hey, you got it, bud. It's smell.
Yeah, I did.
You can smell things so much better.
Weird.
Okay, question 5. Where did the sandwich get its name? Is it the city of Sandwich near Kent in England? Is it the Earl of Sandwich, who liked to eat pieces of meat between bread while hunting? Or is the origin of the word sandwich unknown?
See, I want to say it's the Earl of Sandwich because I think that's the thing that people gravitate towards. There is a place called Earl of Sandwich, and it's a sandwich shop. I got to go with that one.
It's correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
love
is.
how you used context on that one.
Could you imagine, like, if it's not even true, you have to tell that to the CEO of Earl of Sandwich, and he's like,
Yeah.
my life is a lie.
They're like, we gotta lean further into this more Earls of Sandwich.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've gotten 3 right out of 5 so far, it looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, not too bad.
Not bad. You're on a bit of a streak. Okay, final question.
It's about
60%,
jizz. Yeah.
60% of sandwiches sold globally are actually hamburgers. What day of the year is International Female Orgasm Day? Is it March 17th? Is it August 8th? Or is it November 1st?
It's November 1st.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah. It's the turning of the season. You're probably wearing socks more often. You're a little cozier, a little more relaxed. You
Mm.
like to snuggle more. November 1st, orgasm day, jizz
Mm.
day. Yep.
November 1st is All Saints Day, you sinner. It's August 8th,
August 8th in the middle of summer. How about that?
middle of
Okay.
summer when it's just sweaty.
Wet, just sweat. Okay. I
Uh,
love it.
Justin, you got 50% right on I'll have what she's having, and by that I mean a sandwich. Um,
I loved the mix of
you
that.
know,
That was good.
passable in certain schools.
Some schools, like not great schools, but some schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that's what I expected from Joe. Yeah, it is what I expected from Joe.
I don't know how those other questions got mixed up in it. That was
I don't either. Yeah, something messed up with your notes. Yep. Uh-huh.
it was I was saving it for a future episode. Things got kind of thrown together, lost in translation. Who knows?
What episode?
You're gonna find out.
Certainly not our Muppet episodes.
Oh wow, it's gonna be worse for the Muppet episode.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Joe, I was very pleased with this movie.
Hmm.
We hit on all the bits. It's very cozy. It's very safe, I guess is a good word. It feels just like a nice sweater. It's a hug. It's
Ah,
semi predictable, but you go through a journey. And yeah, I think it does stand the test of time. I was very pleasantly surprised with that it didn't seem like a typical 80s movie filled with racist remarks and misogynistic tendencies. This felt just like a real drive home story.
it feels like it taps into something deeper. That's kind of what makes it kind of stand the test of time in that way.
So
But
I had this thought earlier. So Nora Ephron, any relation to Zach?
no, I think they're spelled differently. She's got a PH. He's got an F.
Ah, okay. That just pops in my head. Don't even worry about it.
There was a bit of a left and right situation at Ellis Island that happened, and
PHs go this way, Fs go that way. Yeah. But no, I love this movie. I'm glad you brought it up. It was one that, I had an idea about. I had a general inkling about it.
Mhm.
Um, but I came out of it just like, oh, that was a really cute movie. I loved it.
Yeah, it's the ideal comfort watch, and I'm glad I've given that to you.
Next
Going
next
forward.
time I'm on a plane for going to Florida or
It's
whatever.
it's always on planes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my go-to now.
Oh, okay. So Justin, that wraps up our mini series on love. I
Yep.
think we did a good job. I think we picked 2 interesting movies to kind of approach the topic from different directions.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Um,
definitely did. And I'm looking forward to next month,
yeah, tell me
March.
about it.
Next month is March, and I love alliteration. And what we're going to do musical March.
Mm.
So we're going to do musicals that kind of passed us by. And I'm going first in a couple weeks. And Joe, we're going to do The Little Shop of Horrors.
I fully look forward to expanding the Moranis verse in my mind. And I'm ready to talk Moranis.
Let's talk Moranis. We're talking Moranis, folks.
I
Yeah,
want
so that's
more Moranis.
more Moranis.
Yeah,
And
I avoided saying that.
I know. And and then in April we're doing some Oscar bait talk. And then like I mentioned earlier, we're doing some Muppet Mayhem in May.
I
So
feel like we're really building up Muppet Mayhem. I am super excited for Muppet Mayhem.
I am too, and I cannot tell you how excited my wife is to just watch anything related to Muppets. And it's gonna be so much fun.
I'm
Um,
terrified for the games that we come up with for Muppet
you should be,
Mayhem.
as you should be. Yeah. Last closing thoughts. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
I'm excited to watch this movie again and again until I die.
Same,
And
same.
I want to explore the Efron verse more. I want to watch You've Got Mail again.
Yeah.
I've never really dived into Sleepless in Seattle, so I want to get into that as well.
All those movies feel the same. Okay. All right. Yeah.
You
We should.
begin to like see a trend. It's
Yeah.
very homey. It's very comfortable. It's very New York. Even
It's
though
approachable.
I don't think Sleepless in Seattle is that New York? I don't know.
Seattle, Washington.
They're in two different locations, I believe.
Okay. See, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. We may have to circle back around.
We should check it out. Yeah.
Yep. Great. Well, Joe, thanks again. I appreciate it.
We'll talk
Holly.
musicals next time.
Absolutely. See ya.
Bye.